I created all these savings challenges and professional quality budgeting tools using just my home computer. Want to see how I did it? I'll share some of my secrets coming up next. Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and on this channel we talk about cash budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hit the like button, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. What I want to talk about today is how to create savings challenges using Canva. This is something that anyone can learn to do. It just requires a little practice. I have here some of the savings challenges and budgeting tools that I've done, all of which I designed in Canva. Some people who have received my challenges have speculated that I have a background in design. I would say I have an interest in design, but I have not had any formal training. My first experience with doing page layouts was in my junior year of high school when I worked on the student newspaper and was the sports editor. If you know me personally, then you know how ironic that is. At any rate, I had to learn Adobe PageMaker from scratch and just kind of fumble my way through it for that semester. About 6 years later, when I was early in my career, I was tasked with creating and updating technical data sheets using Adobe InDesign, and I did take a one-day class on how to use InDesign, but that work was mostly text blocking and copywriting. All the graphic elements were already done for me. So, flash forward to today. When I decided that I wanted to start creating savings challenges, I looked around for design and layout software. I knew I didn't want to go back to using InDesign. For one thing, the license is really expensive for Adobe Creative Cloud. And for another, I'd been away from it for almost 20 years, so the software had changed a lot, and I wasn't sure that I was willing to essentially start over again to try to catch up to where it had evolved to. Adobe tools are incredibly powerful, and I would have faced a really steep learning curve. So I wanted something that was simple and intuitive, and eventually I landed on Canva. I watched a couple videos and then just decided to dive in. But if you have never worked with page layout software before, Canva can feel overwhelming. But like with anything, as you gain experience with it, you'll start to build familiarity, and then you can do projects that will come together faster and faster as you go along. I want to show you a few sample projects that I put together, and if this video is popular enough, I may even turn it into a series. For now, let's go to my computer and see what we can create. Okay, so here we are. I'm opening up Canva in my internet browser. I use a Mac, so I'm using Safari here. I'm just clicking on Create a New Design on the left-hand side, and I usually go with the custom size. Unless I'm creating a video, anything else is custom. It's important that you change the unit from pixels to inches unless you want to create in pixels, but if you're doing a page layout, then change that to inches first. Otherwise, if you don't and you type in, for example, 8.5 by 11, and then you try to switch from pixels to inches, it will convert the 8 pixels or 8.5 pixels into inches, as opposed to just translating it to 8.5 inches. So the first thing that I'm going to do is set kind of a border for the challenge that I want to create. I'm going to start with an A6 challenge. I do mine 3 inches by 6 inches, which is good enough to fit into a zippered A6 envelope. If you like to have them a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller, you can play around with this if you want, but for me, 3 inches by 6 inches is a good rule. I'm putting a border around it just so I am able to see where the boundaries are. You don't necessarily have to do this, but for me, because I'm creating 3 on one page, I want to be sure that I have pretty deep cut lines to be able to do it. So I'm going to center these now, and I'm grouping them here because I want to keep them together so that they all stay in the center of the page. Grouping and ungrouping is something that you'll want to be familiar with as you continue to use Canva. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a background for one of the savings challenges, and I'm typing in a winter background because these are going to be winter themed. And you'll see here in the results, click on graphics, you'll see here in the results that a lot of these have little crowns by them, and that means they are premium features, so only for Canva Pro subscribers. I think as you go along, you may decide that Canva Pro is something worth paying for, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to stick with the free elements. So here we're just going to size it to be the same size as the A6. I'm putting this in the back layer. So layers is another thing you'll want to get familiar with so that that border shows up on top. If I had put this on the top layer, then you wouldn't be able to see the border. So now I'm creating a text box, and when I use these kind of custom text, already fancy designs, they will often be the wrong size, and they'll often come grouped when they're more than one. So I'll ungroup them first. I will change the text to what I want it to be, and then I am going to shrink down these boxes because that can really affect your layout if you don't shrink them to fit. So now that that's done, I am going to group them together so that they move as one, and I'm going to position them kind of where I want them. I'm also going to shrink this down. So you could also do this where you adjust the font size as you're editing the text, but for me, it's just as easy just to shrink them down together so that they move in tandem and I don't have to tweak each one individually, especially since I'm dealing with two different font sizes here. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm looking for a snowflake design, and this is going to be a coloring challenge. So that's the snowflake design is what is going to be colored in. Again, we have a lot of pro designs here, so I'm looking for one that has enough white space that can be colored in and is also free. So there's a couple things that I need to do here. The first is I need to shrink it to size so that it fits. And this one, you'll see there's this box here that's grayed out under ratio where it's locked. That means if you change the width, it will also change the height in tandem. If that is unlocked, then it will only change one dimension at a time. Now, the other thing to note about this is that this graphic has a transparent background, so you're able to see right through into the background of the savings challenge, which is that winter design that we picked earlier. So here what I'm doing is I'm adding a circle to the design, excuse me, and I am going to shrink that to be just larger than the snowflake. Now I've made the background on this circle white so that it overlays the background on the savings challenge, but now I need to put it behind the snowflake itself. Now here it's not quite big enough, and I'm having to zoom in on the design itself so that I can make sure that the circle covers all of the snowflake. So I'm going to increase it just a little bit, and you see here it's locked, so it's doing both in tandem. And now what I want to do is I want to center and middle the snowflake inside the circle. So I've selected both, and then I selected center and middle so that it goes to the center of the design. Now I'm duplicating it here, so I don't have to create this whole thing from scratch. I can just duplicate. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to line up all four of these. So I need to select all four. Oh, I see. Well, first I'm going to position the one on the left, and then I'm going to position the one on the right. So essentially I'm setting the extremes, and you'll see why this is important here in a moment. Okay, so I've positioned the left and the right, and now I'm going to select all four, and I'm going to tidy up, which means it's going to center them evenly, or it's going to space them evenly. So now I've got four. I'm grouping those, so now these are a group, and I am going to duplicate them. Well, I'm going to recenter them on the design. Then I'm going to duplicate them, and I'm going to create multiple rows. So one of the things with object design like this is you have to be very aware of what it is you're clicking, what it is that's selected. If you accidentally click the wrong thing or you click too many things, things will move around the page in ways that you don't want. There is an undo button, and I use it frequently, but mistakes do happen. And so if you get a bad result, just hit undo, unselect the thing that you didn't mean to have selected, and then continue on as you had intended. Okay, so now very quickly, we've gone from 1 snowflake in a circle to 20 snowflakes in a circle. We have 5 rows of 4. And so now what I'm doing is essentially kind of the same thing that I did before. I'm moving the top one up, and I'll do a rough, layout of where I want all of these to go. It doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to use the tool inside Canva to space things out evenly. So now I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going back to position, and I'm going to tidy them up. So now that they're spaced evenly, I can sort of readjust to be where I want, and I'm kind of experimenting here just to see what works best on the page. There are more elements that I need to add at the bottom, so I need to leave space for this. Because the borders of this are well defined, I can go straight to the edge because there's more print area. If I were doing this custom, then I would want to make sure that I left enough margin for the printer. So now what I'm doing is I've copied just one of these and I'm shrinking it down. And the reason is because I need to make some sort of a key or a legend so that whoever's doing the challenge can set the amount of each snowflake. And so I've got one of those and I've shrunk it. I could have used the advanced size tools here just to specify the size that I want. But because I'm not sure, I'm playing around with those handles on the sides of it to experiment with how big or small I want it to be. So now I'm doing just an extra blank circle and I'm positioning that to the right. So that's where somebody's going to write in whether each snowflake is $5 or 50 cents or roll a D6 or whatever it will be, because it's going to be up to the saver. And now I'm putting in an equal sign just with the text box here. So now what I need to do is select everything, make sure that this is aligned. So I am tidying them up, and then I will group them. And then I want to align them to the center. And see, here's something I made a mistake. So, and now I've grabbed something and now that's wrong. So now resort to the undo button. And I'm undoing several steps here because what I want to do is center this to not the page, but just the A6 challenge that I'm working on. So I'm having to click around to make sure everything is unselected so that I can select only what I want. So I've selected the border, I've selected just those three elements at the bottom, and now when I hit center, the smaller objects are always centered to the larger objects. That's the priority order. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my logo. I try to remember to do this on everything I create because I think it's important. It's something that you're proud of, so you want to put your name on it, but you also want your brand awareness to grow if that's something that you're working on. Full disclosure, I paid for this logo to be professionally designed. I am not a graphic designer by any stretch of the imagination. I'm very happy with the way that it turned out. It's not free to get that done. I mean, you are paying a professional for their services. So it does cost. For me, I felt it was important. But if you're just starting out, that may be something that you want to put on your future bucket list. So here what I'm doing is I'm adding a border to this sort of rounded edge rectangle. And I am going to position this over my logo so that it has a background and it's not just floating on the background of the savings challenge itself. So again, layering, I need to push it backward so that it is behind the logo itself. And then I need to shrink it down so that it's in proportion to the logo file. So just like with everything else, I now want to make sure that things are properly aligned. And so here I'm going to the Layers tab so that I can select things that otherwise might be kind of tricky to click on by themselves because they overlap or because they're so close together. So I've got everything centered and aligned. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to move on to the next challenge. Well, actually, no, I take that back. I may be still tweaking the position here. Yeah, I'm going to shrink that box a little more. And again, this is something that you may just have to play around with. So now I need to unlock that the ratio so that I'm only adjusting the vertical dimension and I'm not adjusting the horizontal. And because I've done that, I need to realign, recenter everything. And I'm very particular about placement. But the good thing is that once you have it placed, it's very easy to replicate onto sequential pages. So that's done. I'm going to zoom back out and I'm going to move on to savings challenge number 2. So this one being done, again, I've put it on an 8.5 by 11. You can put it onto a page that is essentially 3 inches by 6 inches, but then you need to reserve printer margin, you need to have bleed, you need to make sure that you're using the right size paper, because if you put it onto something that is exactly 3 inches by 6 inches, the printer isn't going to be able to go all the way to the edge of the page, so you're going to end up with sort of this white strip on all 4 sides. And most people don't have a printer that's capable of printing 3 inches by 6 inches. So doing it on a larger sheet of paper and cutting it down is the way to go. Here I'm just experimenting with this brick background, and I end up not using it eventually because I just can't make it work. So with the first background, I was able to adjust it on just one dimension, whereas this one, it only moves in lockstep. So I can't unlock it here, and I'm really struggling to figure out what to do with it, and eventually I'm going to give up. So there, I just gave up. So it's time to find something else. I was looking for a black background because the next icon that I want to use is a Santa hat. So I was looking for something chimney related, and I'm not quite ready to give up on those bricks yet. But again, part of the problem is that Canva has so many um, graphics, images, things like that that are reserved for the pro members only. So you really have to scroll through it. There is not a way that I know of just to see the free only, because they really want you to buy the Canva Pro. For me personally, I have a year's subscription to Canva Pro. It's well worth it. But when you're just starting out, that may be a bridge too far. It may not be money that you're willing to spend. You may not have it to spend. So there are other ways of doing it. Of course, you can also import graphics from other programs, and I'll show you how to do that here a little bit later. But generally speaking, the fastest way to get a background or any kind of image that is usable is to look in the Canva image search yourself. So I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and nothing is really jumping out at me. And finally, I decide that I'm just going to use a non-brick background. I'm going to get something that is festive in another way and just make the most of it. And that's something that you may find yourself doing from time to time. You may find yourself in a position where, something that you really want, you just can't make it work, and you have to get the next best thing. It would be so easy to get hung up on this, kind of as I did here, where it's like, no, I need it to be red bricks. And in reality, the bricks aren't really so important. I can make do with another background. It just will work just as well. The background isn't the most important thing, and it's burning time here. So now I go for a more general Christmas background, go to graphics, I'm going to scroll down, and eventually I'm going to pick this red one kind of here in the middle of the screen right now. And that will allow me to resize as I need. One of the things about this background is that it is very highly saturated. So imagine when you're creating savings challenges or anything in Canva, really, if it's something that you intend to print, especially on an inkjet printer, be mindful of how much ink it's going to use. The page will probably have waves in it just because of how much ink it's going to lay down. And ink is not inexpensive. So one of the things that you can do is adjust the transparency, and I'll do that here in a moment. But first, I'm going to place the text for what this challenge will be. One of the great things about Canva is it has some of these preset font styles that you can just use. Now you have to adjust them to your needs, of course, but it at least gives you a good starting point. So here I'm putting in Oh Santa, and these colors don't really go together, and I'm going to fix that here in a moment. But there's a lot that I need to do here. I need to fix the size, I need to fix the alignment, I need to make sure that it's in the proper position of the page. So everything in good time. And here I'm going to adjust the font just using the pull down menu. I could shrink the box if I wanted to, but here for whatever reason I just decided that I was going to do it this way. So now I am going to shrink the box just so it doesn't run off the page. And now I'm going into the Effects tab, which is where you can make tweaks. So I decided that I wanted this text on a curve, and you just play around with it and find what is appropriate for what you're doing. Now, sometimes you'll notice this was centered, like, for example, Canva thinks that this is centered, but in fact, the exclamation mark is kind of running off the screen. So I'm going to just bump it over a little bit just to get it back to where it's not going to be right up to the edge. And now I'm adjusting the transparency on the background, and I'm going to take this way down. I think I'm adjusting the transparency on the background, but actually what has happened is I've selected the wrong object. So I've selected the border instead of the image itself. So now I'm going into the Layers menu where you can see everything, and I can make sure that I'm selecting actually the red background. And now I can adjust the transparency. So it's just something that you have to get used to with working in Canva or any graphics program, is make sure that the thing that you've selected is actually the thing that you want to adjust. So now it's time to change these colors. I don't like this color combination on a good day, and especially not for a Christmas challenge. So here, again, experimentation. There's always the undo button if you make a mistake. Is green and red the best combination for this? I don't know. I'm kind of looking at it, trying to evaluate. Green and red do typically clash on the best of days. Christmas, we kind of make an exception and pretend they don't. But eventually, I just decide to go with red and white. So, having done that and having gotten the text more or less the way that I want it, it's time now to start adding in the elements that are going to be used by whoever's using the savings challenge. So now what I need to do is, instead of choosing an element from the Canva library, I'm going to upload a graphic that I have on my desktop. Now, I have the rights to use this graphic. If you are using graphics that you're importing, just make sure that you have the full license to use them. If you start using someone else's intellectual property, you may get a copyright strike. That could be really bad news. So you really want to be careful of that. I'm not a patent attorney or a trademark attorney. I'm not a legal advisor. But if you have any questions about that, and it's something that you really want to do, then it may be worth consulting one. There are ways that you can get a license for certain trademarked characters or designs or what have you. But I'm not the one who can advise you on that. So now this one, I need to bring the Santa hat to the front. So here I'm just going to drag it. And Canva makes that relatively easy. I've struggled here a little bit. But you can move things around where they are in relation to each other in the sandwich layers, just here in the layers menu. So now I've got one of them. I'm going to select it and the circle background. I'm going to make sure that they are aligned. So I need to remiddle it, as I would call it, because it's already centered. And now I'm grouping it, and I'm going to move it into position. And I usually just start with the top left. It's easiest for me. I duplicate it. I move it next to where it's going to be. And now what Canva will do is it will look at where that second image is in relation to the first and repeat it 2 more times with the same cadence. So that's a really handy feature. And now what I need to do is, just like with the previous one, excuse me, I need to align everything. So I'm setting the extremes. I'm saying that the one on the left needs to be here, and the one on the right needs to be, well, now I'm going to adjust it using the old-timey, old-fashioned way. Selecting them all, and I'm going to use tidy up to spread them out evenly. So now I'm going to group them, just like I did with the last time, and duplicate and go for another row, position it, another row, and another row. So just like before, once you start making copies, Canva will continue making copies in relation to the previous one, just as it did before. It makes that really, really easy. So now I want to duplicate my logo, and I want to have it in the same position as on the last one. Canva will bring up alignment guides that will make this easy. So there, you see you've got those dashed purple lines, so you know that it is in the same axis as the one on the other page. And just like before, I am going to duplicate these and shrink them so that I can make a key for whoever ends up using the savings challenge. So duplicate, then group, and then shrink, and then drag. So this is not an exact thing. There's nothing to say that they have each icon has to be a ½ inch, and each each circle has to be 0.7 inches or what have you. It's just whatever you feel, and however many you want, and the layout that you want. It's entirely up to you. Use your creative brain and decide what you want things to be and proceed accordingly. There have been times when I have gotten near to the end of a project and it just didn't come together the way that I wanted, and I either started all over or I had to back out several steps. And that's just part of the learning process. It's part of experimentation. Things will take longer when you are new. And I've been using Canva now for, I don't know, almost a year. and I'm still learning. So there's always things to be learned every single day. So now what I'm doing is I am creating another little box, an even smaller box or circle, to put my equal sign in, just because I've got a really saturated background here, and I want to make sure that it stands out. Now, when Canva placed the text box, it defaulted to white text, and because I'm going to put it on a white circle, I need it to be black text. So I adjusted that here. I am going to group that with the circle. It's already fairly well aligned, and now I'm going to align these objects down here at the bottom to each other, and then I am going to center them on the page. So I almost grouped them, but I realized I needed to align them first. So always align before grouping, and I clicked the wrong button. That was the wrong thing to do. I just needed to tidy them up. So now I'm going to group them, and now I'm going to center them in relation to the background of the savings challenge. And I can tell here that my logo is now out of alignment, so I'm going to fix that as well. Okay, so that's done, and we can move on to savings challenge number 3. But before I do, I'm going to play around with some of the alignment here and the transparency, because I don't want to use too much ink. I also don't want it to be too washed out, so I upped it here a little bit. And now we'll move on to savings challenge number 3. So savings challenge number 3, because these are themed, I am going to look for another winter background. This time I am going to do something that lends itself to ice skates, or ice skating, because that is the icon that I want to use. And so I'm just scrolling, looking for something that's appropriate. For a background, you want something that is suggestive of what you're working on, but you don't necessarily want something that is too busy. Now, in this case, of course, I just said that, and I'm picking a very busy background, but for a reason in mind, because this is not going to be a coloring challenge. This is going to be a roll and save challenge. So I'm not, well, I mean, people can color the ice skates if they want, because I do pick a white ice skate, but excuse me, they don't necessarily have to. The primary purpose is for it to be a roll and save. So now I am going to go into the text box, and I'm going to look up or scroll through some of the examples that they have. And I think one of these, I end up clicking something that is a pro, and it says, oh, you want something pro. Well, here's your chance to subscribe. And I click out of that. And then you have to keep scrolling and just find something that works. Or, you can always create it on your own. If I do another one of these, I may show how to do text from scratch, where you're making your own design. Now, this one grabbed me because it says "'Tis the Season" in it, and I thought, perfect. We're off to a good start. We're already thinking wintry here. So now I'm going to adjust the text to be what I want it to be. So it's going to say "Winter at the Lake." And then I will adjust the size of the text boxes and then do all the alignment like I did before. I don't think savings challenges need to have the most catchy titles. You can, if you've got something punny to say, then by all means say it. But realistically, you're going to be with these for probably a pretty short time, especially these A6 challenges. So it doesn't have to be necessarily the most profound or funny thing in the world. So just aligning these, and again, this is something that you'll get better at with practice. So I'm centering them to the background or to the challenge itself. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to look for something to use as an icon for this. And I'm going to look for ice skates. Excuse me, again, I'm looking for something that is free to use. And because, an ice skate is an ice skate is an ice skate, so I picked this one. If I were using a more muted background, I might have gone for that purple skate with the gold blade, but this will do for this one. It's sort of a, not minimalist, but kind of unfussy, not too many bright colors kind of aesthetic here. So I'm just positioning this one, And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a box. Because it's a roll and save, I need some place for the saver to write in the number that they roll. So first I'm going to create 4 of them, just like I've done with the others, and then I will create the boxes to put below the ice skates. I tried to fit 5 on, and that just wasn't going to work. And those boxes will be again where whoever's using this challenge would write in, okay, I rolled a 3, I rolled a 2, I rolled a 6, whatever it is, for the duration of the challenge. So tidying these up, grouping, centering to the background. And I could have waited to do this. I don't know why I did this at this stage, because once I start adding in those boxes, I kind of need to recenter everything again. So here we go. It's just a square that I'm using. Again, I'm going to set the background to a white color, and I will set a border. So now the background's white. Now this menu here is where I select the border. I've just selected a solid border, and I'm taking the border weight down. That is in points. 1 point is usually plenty for a border, unless you want something really thick. All of them that I've used so far, these are all 1 point borders, and they're pretty thick. So now I'm going to shrink it down to something that, you want to leave enough room for people to write, but at the same time, it doesn't need to be an enormous box. Now I'm trying to align it to this skate, but I've grouped those skates, so it's not working. So I'm just going to create all 4 boxes here. I will ungroup the ice skates eventually. There we go. And now I am going to align all of these, or center them, one at a time, and then group them. So center, 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 and center. So all of these kind of shifted around. So now I'm going to group them each, and then I will use the tidy up function again to make sure that they are spaced evenly. And you can see I'm grabbing wrong things as I'm clicking around, so I have to make those adjustments. Just watch what you're doing as you're making savings challenges or anything else in Canva. And like I say, if things suddenly go haywire, the undo button is your friend. So now I've tidied them up. Now I need to center them to the page, so I am grouping them, and I've hit center, so it centers them to the full 8.5 by 11. Instead of, now I've grabbed the savings challenge itself, just the A6 that I'm working on, and hit center, so it centers them in the actual savings challenge box. So now, since I've got these selected already, I'm just going to duplicate a few times, 4 times. So instead of having 20, this one is going to have 16, just because that's all that there's room for. I could squeeze and make it 20 or more potentially, depending on how much I was looking to tweak it, but I think 16 is fine. This is, like I say, a quickie A6 challenge. It's not something that somebody is hopefully going to be working on for months at most. They would probably work on it for, I don't know, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, maybe even 16 weeks if they do it once a week. But at any rate, I'm going to now nudge those up a little, and I am going to slide my logo in. I don't need a key for this one because it's up to the saver. Do they want to roll a D6? Do they want to roll a D12, a D20, a D4, a D8? Whatever it is, it's up to them. So I tend not to be too prescriptive in savings challenges when I create them, because I think people on their own have a lot of imagination. So I respect that. So now what I've done is I've duplicated the page, so it's created the whole page again. And what I'm doing this time is I'm deleting that middle challenge, because I'm going to make now 5 savings challenges. So I'm grouping everything together here, and I am just going to kind of cheat and enlarge. You can recreate them all over again if you want. And increase the size of each on its own. But in this case, this is a handy shortcut where you just group everything and then you make adjustments as necessary. Now, as an A6 challenge is 3 inches by 6 inches to fit in a zippered envelope, an A5 is going to be 4.5 inches wide by 7.5 inches long. if you want it to fit in a zippered envelope. So with this one, I am trying to hit, well, first I tried to hit the 4.5 and then I tried to hit the 4. Because everything is grouped, you may have to make tweaks, and eventually I do that here. So I decide that I am going to adjust the height dimension eventually to be what I need it to be, and then it will adjust everything else from there. So I am grouping everything again, and now as I adjust the height, it will adjust everything else in tandem. So I'm putting that at 7.5, which is my max. It will be a little bit skinnier. It's going to be about 3.5 inches, so there's going to be some more room. But it'll fit fine in an A5 envelope. And again, these are just quickie challenges. It's all that you need. So now I'm going to repeat the same process here, 7.5 inches tall, and I'll kind of align it on the page. I mean, you're going to be printing this on an 8.5 and then 8.5 by 11 and then cutting them out. So that's about where we get to here. And now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to save them and then how to download them. Okay, so saving and downloading. Saving is very simple. You just type up in here in the box, you double click it, and you type in whatever you want to call it. It will be saved automatically to Canva. You can see there's off to the left, there's that cloud with a check mark in it. That means it is saving your design to the Canva cloud. To download it, go to the Share menu, click on Download. You can select the kind of download that you want. I'm intending to print this, so I'm going to PDF print, and here again, I've clicked on a Pro feature by mistake. So when you download things to print, there are 2 color palette options. There's RGB, which is best for digital, best for use on screens, and then there is CMYK, which is best for printing. In this case, we don't have access to CMYK on the free version, so we're downloading in RGB. It will print fine. And now that it's downloading, it will save it to our downloads folder, and you're done. You've got your file. So there we have it. I've printed off the savings challenges in A6 and A5, and now all that remains to be done is to cut them and put them in the zippered envelopes and then start saving. I hope that the tutorial that I gave was informative. I know there were some steps that I kind of rushed through, so if there's things that you are interested in seeing that I either didn't cover or that I went through too fast, please leave me a comment down below. And as I said, I may consider turning this into a series if people really like it and want to see more. But for now, I do want to thank you for spending some time with me today, and a special thank you for watching all the way through to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, leave a comment down below, and share with your friends. If you're interested in any of the savings challenges that I shared at the start of the video, a link to my Etsy shop is down in the description. Until I see you again next time, take care.